All right. Hello and welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar, Boost Your SAP, SAP HANA, and S4 HANA Migration Project to AWS. We appreciate all of you taking your time out of your busy schedules to attend today's educational webinar, and we hope to answer all of your technical questions for the cloud migration path for SAP to AWS. We will be starting the webinar shortly, but first I wanted to go through a few housekeeping notes. Only our presenters' phones are live. Your microphones have been muted by default. Our presenters will be answering questions at the conclusion of the webinar, so if you have a question at that time, you can type it in the Q&A function in your chat window. If we don't get to your question during the presentation, I or another member of the Protera team will be sure to follow up with you directly. And lastly, this webinar will be recorded and a link will be made available to all attendees. Now I would like to introduce today's presenters, Patrick Osterhaus, President and Chief Technology Officer for Protera. He is responsible for driving Protera's technology vision and innovation for our valued clients. Patrick is also a SAP thought leader and a very sought-after presenter and contributor in the SAP ecosystem. We also have Protera's Director of Client Services, Pete Ditmars, who is responsible for the organization's adherence to strict industry standards. Pete has over 20 years of experience providing SAP technical project management and direct support of SAP hosting and cloud solutions. So without further intro, take it away, Pat and Pete.
Thank you, Kristen. This is Pete. Just going to quickly go through our agenda before we get into the meat of the presentation here. We're going to start off with an overview of Protera and our partnership with AWS. Talk about a little bit of AWS for SAP and S4 HANA. Then get into the specifics of your migration plan and where you need to go to get started, the different migration options and project plans. Then we'll talk a little bit about SAP S4 HANA, and then the Protera FlexBridge migration platform. And we'll touch on some customer success stories at the end, and then finally we'll open it up to questions if time permits. Okay, a little bit about Protera. Protera was formed in 1998. We're a global IT outsourcing services delivery platform. We have customers across the world in all different industries and geographies. Protera is headquartered in Chicago, Illinois, with resources and offices globally around the world. Our main services are Protera AppCare platform, which is designed for application management and hosting services of SAP and SAP ancillary applications, along with our Protera FlexBridge migration platform. We have numerous certifications, including SAP hosting, cloud, HANA, as well as certifications with Amazon AWS. Our partnership with AWS started in 2011. We actually have been using AWS for demo systems, even going back several years prior to that. Protera has been an SAP partner since 1998, with more than 15 SAP references on AWS and growing as we speak. We have extensive AWS migration expertise, as well as multiple decades of SAP migration expertise. Protera AppCare platform consists of processes, technical platform, and personal resources, with the ability to support SAP systems either on premises or in public and private clouds. Protera supports migrations within clouds and from on-premise to cloud, and really any combination you could think of in that area. The AppCare platform provides an integrated environment for customer applications with full software lifecycle of design, of architecture, implementation, and migrations, go live, and steady state support. AppCare is offered for all SAP solutions and many of the enterprise applications which integrate into SAP and companies use to run their businesses. Just some key pillars in the Protera AppCare platform. Want to point out in the top section there under people and experts, something we call Protera University, which is a full curriculum for bringing on new employees from inexperienced hires right out of school to bringing in experienced SAP resources. And this is, like I said, a full curriculum for bringing these people up to speed with Protera processes and technologies and moving them up into the the higher tiered, more skilled support. We have ITIL certification across our organization. All of our engineers go through basic ITIL training and certification when they're brought on board, and we have groups within Protera that have more advanced ITIL training and certification as well. And then we have numerous cloud certifications within our engineering core as well. As I mentioned before, Protera's AppCare platform spans on-premise and private and public clouds. We support migrations cloud to cloud and on-premise to cloud, as I mentioned before. Pretty much any combination of OS and database we support as-is migrations, as well as upgrading or changing your OS and database during the migration process. Just a few more of our capabilities when it comes to migrations. The Protera AppCare team is to help you with the design of architecture, the implementation, the migration itself, the go-live activities, and steady state support from go-live and beyond. AppCare is offered for all SAP solutions and many of the enterprise applications which integrate into SAP and companies use to run their business. And we can do the migrations in as few steps as possible to minimize the amount of downtime and the number of downtime windows.
All right, Pete, thank you. I'll take over for the next few slides here. We're going to start getting into some of the migration and AWS capabilities, so I'll talk to those content, that area. This is the last slide about AppCare, and we'd like to use this slide to show how we differentiate ourselves and see our value in the market. And that is around these 5 areas of what we could talk about, the cloud technologies, what AWS provides, and what we can innovate for our SAP customers. And this is, as you can see here under the bullets, the flexibility of the choice under the AWS marketplace of quickly deploying applications and full solutions just within a few clicks in a few minutes. And that true scalability, the provisioning capabilities of bringing a system up or sizing it within just a few minutes larger, which is very good for some use cases, which we'll see in a few slides from here. And we have the agility where we can rapidly deploy an existing environment, copy it over there, or bring a new greenfield solution in and integrate that with a hybrid back to the on-premise SAP systems. And then the best part is that we take advantage of all the pre-built, pre-engineered solutions around security, existing roles, extending, it might be a corporate network, Active Directory, extending that into the AWS cloud, and then extending that with the security built into the cloud, not only in the physical level within the data centers, the AWS platform, but also extending that through all the layers, which we'll see the key pieces, the components of AWS cloud, which we'll get into a little bit. And then lastly, all these, you say the synergy of these 4 pieces drive reduction of cost and complexity. The simplicity of the cloud is reducing the complexity, and with these efficiencies reduces the cost and time to implement. So that summarizes our Protera AppCare line of business. We're now going to focus around migration, talking about AWS, and how does our product Protera FlexBridge fit into this picture. So this slide talks to the SAP solutions which are fully supported for AWS. And as you can see in the left side there in the top, those are the most popular software applications we're getting interest that we see in the market. It's the new application from SAP S/4HANA, which was introduced 2 years ago, and last year added BW for HANA, and that extends to the existing Business Suite and NetWeaver. So we have these solutions which are, I would say, probably at least 90% of the systems that SAP has at customer sites, and they are fully certified to run in AWS. You can see in the middle part the databases that are fully supported for AWS, the database and mobile solutions, I should say. As of paramount importance and of interest right now is SAP HANA, which we'll talk to here in the migration slides. And then you can see the other databases, ASE, IQ, as well as the other OS and databases, DB2, MaxDB, SQL Server. Fully supported, the note there's on the bottom if you want to get more information on that. Certified instances is very important when you're running SAP, especially production. You want to run that with certified resources in the cloud, as well as having SAP AWS support, which is required for SAP support. So to clarify, AWS business support is required for SAP production systems. So that's obviously very important, as well as the resource to use. I like the slide especially because it shows how quickly the innovation is happening in the AWS cloud. We can see as of just 2 years ago, there was just one certified instance type for HANA, and now you can see there's 5 here. Most recently at Sapphire, just a few months ago, the introduction of a 4 terabyte instance with the X1E system has been released, so that can scale up to 4 terabytes. And it was announced at the same Sapphire that in the roadmap within the next 15 to 18 months, so it's closer to a year now, we will have a 15 terabyte scale up option. So the very largest workloads can go into AWS Cloud for SAP. Just a brief introduction. There's a lot of webinars on this topic, but just so we have some basic understanding for some of the areas we're going to talk to with migration on AWS is these 3 components you can talk to with compute, storage, and networking. You can talk about the compute side where these are the instances. This would be a one-on-one correlation with virtual machines and VMware. So we can do migrations, and we'll talk about the ideas of how you can simply move VMware systems into the cloud and make those AWS instances. And then the corresponding technologies that you require, which need to be set up with compute, and that is with storage. We're going to store those systems, the databases, and use some really innovative technologies, including S3 for doing backups. So we'll talk a little bit about the architecture diagram. To run the compute and storage, we also need to have networking, and that all the capabilities of on-premise and physical networking solutions can be replicated and fully reproduced and function just as on-premise with the technologies of AWS, including the virtual private cloud and the technologies to connect on-premise into the cloud, which includes direct connect and the gateways and routers, which act as firewalls. So we'll talk a little bit in the slides coming up. There's a lot of webinars in these topics that go into these, give them much more justice on these components. To extend the base components with some new technologies, and we're seeing a lot of exciting developments from AWS, especially around, you see the Analyze with Amazon machine learning integrations into SAP peripheral products. We're seeing this as a key area where we're going to see a lot of innovation over the next few years. So when you migrate to AWS, we're going to see that these exponential technologies we can now bring to bear for the SAP customers. So when we talk migrations, it's good to have a good understanding of what a target environment might look like. And you can think of that left side where we have a customer diagram. That's going to be, it could be SAP systems that are going to directly connect. In this scenario, we could say in the middle here in this region east, which would be the Virginia data centers, we have a landscape of 3 systems, dev, quality, and production, which are ECC. We could have these connected as shown here with the VPN site-to-site, or a direct connect, which is going to be a dedicated network connection. And back at the corporate location, one of the hosted data centers or on-premise in their corporate location, we could have a BW system. So we have a hybrid solution where we have some computing done on-premise, and we connect through a high-speed network connection to the AWS cloud. As you can see here, these are 3 separate instances. Those orange squares there are going to be the compute. And then we're going to size with varying degrees of performance capabilities with I/O, those EBS volumes, that's the storage. So those are going to run the database. It's going to run all the systems, the file systems that you require to run SAP and HANA. And then also S3, as shown here, is where we would do backups into. And the magical capability of S3 is the replication of that data to multiple data centers within that same region. So I know with all the the hurricanes in the last few weeks, unfortunately, heightened awareness on DR and getting those backups to another region. That's built right into the S3 technology. So that's a core piece you can utilize in your AWS solutions. And on that topic, we're talking about planning for natural disasters. The topic of HA and DR comes up. This would be part of our design phase that we would provide for customers going to the AWS cloud. We want them to consider right day one go live that they would have an HR is good, but an HA solution for disaster recovery is even better. Have a HA failover solution architected, as well as a DR solution where they could fail over to a completely new region, or it could be within the same country or outside the country. Those capabilities are vast within AWS. So we have other webinars. Feel free to look those up on YouTube that talk to this topic in more detail. But just for the point here, migration into AWS, we would want to architect HA and DR the first day of go live. So this brings us up closer to the topic we're here today to talk about, and this is migration. We like to show this slide for all of our use cases of where our webinar topic fits in with all the many use cases for AWS Cloud. So in here we have existing SAP customers that are going to migrate. So we see this all in, which would be moving the full SAP landscape into cloud. So you see prod, quality, and dev. And we have some case studies we'll show at the end of the webinar on that, as well as the hybrid architecture. So this would be moving just a few systems into AWS. We would certainly talk to that. This is actually done as part of our migration plan, which Pete will talk more about, of our approach on doing a migration to the cloud. So these two pieces are already done. And we're going to talk about here in the next slide on the approaches for the migration and what's the best approach here for your use case and your roadmap. So where to start? So we're going to first look at the objectives. And we can think of three broad categories of when you're looking at doing a migration, going to AWS. How does your project, what's the drivers essentially? We can think of three areas. And those areas are as is, a technical transformation, and an application transformation. An application could be plural, it could be applications, of course. So the as is, simply said, is you're basically doing a lift and shift. And we have a typo there. It's not life and shift. It's not a new way of doing it. It should have been lift and shift. So lift and shift is copying basically byte by byte what you have on premise and moving it in the cloud. It's the easiest cloud migration. Yet at the same time, there's a cost to that because you will not be able to transform the business, whereas the other two provide you transformation either on the technical or on the business side, application side. So key differentiators is you can think of this maybe on the level of complexity as you go left to right. Migrate to cloud, lift and shift as is the simplest. The technical transformation provides us to migrate to cloud and provide transformation on the OS, the database, and the technical stack, meaning we can then migrate to HANA as a database and not change the application. So we could stay ECC or BW and change the underlying database to HANA. So we get in-memory computing, we get some new analytics, yet the core application does not change, hence there's not a longer cycle for implementing the project. It's more of just a technical transformation. And then our last project type here is the applications transformation. This would include the hot topic right now of going to S4 HANA. So there's a lot of confusion in the market. We see a lot of questions from customers. What does that mean to go to HANA? In S4, how does that differ? As we know, HANA is a database. It is required for the application of S4 HANA. The path is very similar on approach technically to do S4 HANA, yet there's additional steps, and that is around the conversion and the prep that's needed to take that non-HANA system and get that ready for S4 HANA as an application. So there's additional steps. Again, it's not the scope of this webinar. If you have specific questions about going to S4 HANA, we're very happy to talk to you specifically in your objectives. So where do we start? The first part to look at is around that existing landscape. And for those three types we just mentioned, the as-is, the technical migration, and the application migration or transformation, obviously the preparation is going to be very different for each of those. There's some common questions, and you can see those here. is going to be what we categorize as around the migration risk profile. And that's looking at basically how far you are today to where you have to go to run that target environment. So if it's as is, as long as it's x86 based, if it's a Windows or Linux system, you can migrate that directly to AWS Cloud. You can, in quotes, run Windows 2003 in AWS. The better question is if you should, right? It's out of support, but technically it is supported or capable. I shouldn't say supported, it's not supported, but it's technically capable. The key point is where you're going is going to drive how much work and prep work has to be done to assess where you're at today and what you have to go to. Again, not the scope of this webinar, yet if you're going to HANA, there is a wider net of operating systems and databases that you can migrate directly to HANA with versus S4 HANA. So for example's sake, you can migrate directly to HANA with Oracle 11, whereas S4 HANA requires version 12. And to go directly to S4 HANA, you need to have a Unicode system as the source. You cannot go directly to S4 HANA with a non-Unicode source, whereas with HANA, you can do that. So there's some variations there on the target. It gets pretty complicated very quickly, especially when we start talking about compatibility with application plugins and such. This is where that assessment is vital, and key planning helps with the execution. So we'll jump right into going into more details on those three different types that we talked about here momentarily, or a moment ago, I should say. Going back to the adoption drivers, if you remember that slide, that how do we see ourselves in the market, our differentiator, and that's bringing the cloud technologies to the SAP customers. And that's those drivers here, the agility, flexibility, scalability, cost, and complexity. Those are the drivers of why we see customers wanting to go to AWS for all these reasons. So a lot of pent-up demand going to the new technologies for SAP, S/4HANA, and HANA on AWS for these reasons. So how to get there? Again, your path is going to be specific to what your roadmap is and what you want to do. The as-is migration, as I mentioned, is the simpler approach. Your downtime could be next to nothing, could be down in seconds or minutes on the approach, yet you're limiting yourself on the transformation capabilities. Happy to say, going to HANA and even S4HANA, the downtime can be down to just a few hours. We just did a migration to HANA 2 weekends ago. The downtime for a multi-terabyte system was under 12 hours, and that was the technical downtime. So it was all performed, and you'll see this use case here at the end of the webinar of going to HANA from Red Hat Oracle into AWS and upgrading the SAP system at the same time with a 12-hour downtime for the business. Other measurements, you got to look at other supported systems. As I mentioned, when we're going to HANA, you have to make sure all your plugins that are in the non-HANA environment are still going to be compatible, and even more especially so for S4. So a lot of decision points, a lot of things to factor in and consider on this migration path. So this is our value add, is instead of having each customer do this and learn this on their own each time they go through it, our expertise can help them navigate this path and make sure they're asking all the right questions and getting the right approach from the start. And so that's our solution of FlexBridge, which we'll see here momentarily what's all comprised in that solution. So again, lift and shift. In this example, we have Windows or Linux, and we're transferring, or not transferring, we're copying that over to AWS, no changes in the application. We have a lift and transform, where you can see transformation capable on the OS, the database, and SAP. This is not just changing, this doesn't only mean that we're changing out the operating system, but we could be doing a version upgrade also at the same time. So transformation at each of those levels and moving into AWS Cloud at the same time. And then lastly, as we mentioned, the application transformation, which provides us changing out the operating system, the database, going to SAP HANA database, doing SAP upgrade for the application, as well as changing out the application to S4 HANA, which requires a conversion also. So these all still can be done with one step, one downtime, one testing cycle, which brings us into a testing cycle. And Pete is much better versed and experienced to talk to this, so I will let him talk to these slides.
Thanks, Pat. We understand that every environment is different, so every migration is going to be different, and every project, therefore, is going to be different. But there are plenty of commonalities that we can take advantage of, and Protera has the experience of many years and many migrations. So we've been able to, over that time and over that number of migrations, develop a standard project plan that gives us a good solid foundation for any migration project that we take on, with the understanding that each plan is going to have to be customized for that specific customer and their project. So we always start off with an assessment. This is an automated assessment that will look at your source environment and help in the planning out of your target environment, everything from sizing to discussions around what your current OS and DB and what your target's going to look like. We use all that information then to take our standard project plan and customize it so that it's very specific to your migration. Next, when we go to actually perform our migrations, we always do a proof of concept. This is generally performed on a copy of your production landscape. We want to include as much of your production landscape as possible here to give you the best idea of what the migration is going to look like and what the target environment is going to look like. We also use this proof of concept run to build baseline timings so that we can better plan out what your cutover and downtime is going to look like. As Pat mentioned, we can do these proof of concept and test runs to optimize the migration and present you with the minimal impact to your business as possible with the minimum downtime during your cutover. Once we finish the proof of concept, that's when the system's turned back over to the customer for technical and functional system validations. This can be anywhere from a week or 2 weeks to several months, depending on the extent of your migration. Going back to the different types that Pat mentioned, whether this is an as-is or if there's a transformation involved, could determine how much validations you as the customer want to do. And again, you'll use that time to confirm that everything did migrate as expected. And then also, if you're doing a business transformation, say you're going to HANA or to S4 HANA, to see what your business is going to look like in one of those systems. Finally, if we've gone through all that, we will work with the customer to finalize a custom project plan, and we'll move into the actual migrations, the build phase here. And this can take on many forms. Typically it's migrate your dev systems, then your QAs, then your prods. Some customers will want to shorten the timeline, do a dev and then a prod, and then copy prod down to QA afterwards. But that's something that's all customizable. We can work with you to determine the best way to do that. And then we execute the migrations. And again, minimize downtime is the key here. Our goal is to minimize any impact to your business and to your users. And we can do that through our proof of concept and then our customizing of our project plan. And then after the migrations are completed, we like to move you into our steady state support. This is where you have your 24/7/365 monitoring with world-class management of your SAP and any add-on SAP components. And then finally, if you were doing a HANA migration and planning for the future to do an S4, we can start putting together the plans based on the finalization of the HANA migrations. We will use all the documentation and planning that went into that to set up the project plan for that S4 transformation.
Yep. And to that point, some customers want to make the jump directly to S4. This one shows a customer first going to HANA. We can certainly do the one step, and then just setting the stage for S4 to actually be done in the prepping stuff. So there's, as Pete mentioned, every plant is going to be customized for each customer using our best practices. There's going to be some commonality, but we want to talk to each customer specifically of what they want to do. And to that, we wanted to just talk to an example OSDB migration. And this methodology, this approach could be used for pretty much any of the ones we talked to, as is the technical only migration, and then the application transformation. So the approach is on the system level. So Pete talked to how we approach that from our best practices in our PMO or project management perspective. This will show within those build steps and with the execution of the migration, the testing, it's going to be the iterative approach within that full scale migration project. So you can see here, and I apologize, I wanted to animate this. It'll be a little simpler to follow it iteratively, but we'll get through it still. So you can see here on the bottom, the existing SAP landscape. This could be in the cloud today. This could be on-premise. Doesn't matter where it's coming from. Let's say it's on-premise. What we would recommend is we would start with the production system and we make a copy of that. And we would also recommend that system to be located next to prod in that same network. And the reason for that is that we want to be having as many test runs to do the migration with the same environment over the same network as we'll do prod. To Pete's point, we want to do the test runs to give us the timing for the real production migration. So getting enough looks and tests on the same path is important, which production will run in the same type of hardware as source. So we're going to create a copy of production, then we're going to move that over to the cloud. And then again, that's going to be the test run. The customer is going to do end-to-end testing and they'll sign off on it. And that's where we proceed with the next steps. Now, this 1, 2, 3, this could be, 6 months before production is going to run. Typically, this would be a POC, a test, test project to validate the customer has run SAP in AWS. All their interfaces can work. Any other hybrid test case scenarios they want to sign off on, those could run, let's say, 6 months before the project is going to migrate prod. After 3 is validated, then we're going to start with doing a sign off of moving. This says quality. It's development, actually. Development on the number 4, we're going to migrate on-premise dev, and we're going to then have dev running in the cloud. We could then keep dev on-premise as the source for the break fix. So the advantage to this is we have a parallel environment that we build for any ongoing support or changes in that customer environment. So any changes that still have to go to prod, they can still happen in the dev system that the developers and configurators are used to going to. And then we are going to do another test. That's number 5. We'll again copy. We can do another iteration between 4 and 5 of prod if we wish to do a test run. And then the production was actually shown here in 5. The production migration, we get sign off. And then we're going to create quality as a copy of production. And that's just remove one step. And it gives an extra benefit to the customer because their quality system will be current, will be a new copy of production. So obviously this can change. Going to S4 may actually require another run of production test run. It's more for the configuration, the application team, because the application is so new. And to get another iteration on that, that's another thing we're seeing popular with our customers. But from a high level, that's a general approach for the migrations. So we talked a lot about the methodology, the best practices. How do we systemize that and automate this and make it uniform for all of our customers so we can scale it up? That was a question we asked ourselves a couple years ago. And our answer came in the form of a new product we call FlexBridge. So with FlexBridge, it is a software-based application. It is also provided as a service to our customers. So you have a FlexBridge migration expert assigned to you for every migration, and it's a team of resources. So when we're doing these for the production weekend, we'll always have a team of resources to be able to do the migration. So we always have proper backups, as well as the ability to scale up. Even if you have 10 migrations you have to do over a migration weekend, which we've done in the past. So the biggest migrations we have to do all at the same time, concurrent, we can do through the software. The biggest message here, which we talked about previously in the slides with the transformation slides, is the one-step migration. That's a big focus on our customers, seeing that they only want to take one outage, do all the transformation, so they can do transformation in the OS, the database, on HANA itself, that, for the new platform, going to S4 even, and going to cloud with AWS. Do it all one step, one downtime, one testing cycle. So conceptually, we see, again, this project plan, which Pete went through, and it starts with the assessment. And then we going to drive that customized project plan from what we see, and obviously from the roadmap from the customer, or what they want to do. what we start with is an automated report that we've built. We run this in the source systems for every SAP system the customer wants to migrate. We provide ABAP source code, which is going to do a scan of the environment, of the vitals of that SAP system, and it's going to output that into an XML file. So you send that XML file back, and from that, you're going to create a customized report of going to either HANA or S4 HANA, going into AWS. From a very high level, what the report covers is an executive summary, going to cloud, going to S4 or HANA, and then the migration overview from a very high level, and the proposed customer solution in AWS, as well as pricing for that. The most interesting part is looking at the environment at the customer system and remediation steps and prep that has to be done. So this considers some of the areas here shown on the screen: operating system database, all the versions of SAP, the component systems, considerations around Java, Unicode, and then this list gets much longer when you look at S4. With S4, we're looking at custom code remediation, looking at the data itself, conversions that are required. There's many additional steps that are going to be needed that are considered here in the assessment report when you go to S4. Key part with any project is timely notifications of what is occurring. So we built in FlexBridge the automatic notifications for not only us, which is vitally important, but also for the customer and their PMO. So they get updates as the migrations are happening for all the phases within each system's migration. So we quickly see any identification of errors and to resolve those as quick as possible, as well as just knowing the status of all the systems. And as I mentioned, we do migrations where we'll have up to 10 systems migrate at the same time. So it's really important that we are tracking all those properly. And not only the monitoring for the project execution, but individually for each system, knowing that the source and target environment is executing and is healthy on both sides. So we have real-time monitors for, you can't see it here, it's a very small font, unfortunately, but within the full stack: memory, CPU, disk utilization, making sure there's enough space to do the copies, and making sure that there's sufficient network capabilities on the send and receive for both the target and the source. And another key focus area for FlexBridge is that mean time to resolution, reducing when there is a failure to provide a solution very quickly. We provided knowledge base within our product, and every time we run into an error, it automatically gets entered to our knowledge base. So any problem that occurs for any customer's migration is going to automatically be added to our knowledge base, and it's going to be available for any other migration. So the likelihood of us seeing a problem is very high that we'll know the fix once we see that, because we've already run it for so many other customers. So in summary on the FlexBridge, we have a lot of slides that go into each of these in detail. Reduction of cost, time, and risk is all done in complexity through the software. And again, it's the automation of SAP migration and IT's best practices to migrate into the cloud as fast as possible and reducing the risk and any problems along the way. With the software, with the automation, we increase our productivity. As I mentioned, we can scale up, do multiple migrations all at the same time, and improve the visibility of all the actions and the status of each migration for each system. So the best part is not talking about the benefits, but seeing the benefits and improving what we've already done for customers and what they've achieved in benefits. Our very first migration we did years ago with FlexBridge is with MB Coatings. They went from a non-HANA ECC 6.0 Enhanced Package 7 environment. They migrated to Enhanced Package 7 at the time, which is the recent version then, migrated from Oracle Windows over to SLES, which is SUSE Enterprise version 12, as well as migrated to cloud. So this was all done. You can see the downtime minimized was down to 3 hours. When we started the project without FlexBridge, that first test run was in 3 days for the downtime. A more recent migration that we just performed was for Pacific Drilling. Very interesting case study, as you can see here, providing the link. This was a migration for HANA going to AWS, so using our FlexBridge solution. And we provide hosting and AMS services with our Protera AppCare. You can see there on the quote on the right side, the expectation is through the products and through our services, Protera, Pacific Drilling is estimating they will save $1 million over 3 years of the migration and spend optimization in AWS for their solution. And then most recently, we just migrated the production systems for Fitch Ratings. Fitch Ratings provides ratings of countries, and they've just migrated their systems, I should say financial ratings of, debt bond ratings for financial health for countries. They migrated their business suite, which included ECC. They also had BW and Solution Manager. Those were all migrated to AWS, running on HANA on SUSE operating system. That was done with the Protera FlexBridge solution, and then also go live support was provided with AppCare. This case study is very, very new. It just came out, I think, in the last day or two. And you can see the cost savings and the runtime of the migration, the total runtime with Ranjit's comment, his quote there. Originally, we started working with Fitch with the requirement that they wanted to see if there's a way to compress their move to cloud, which was scheduled for a year, and their migration to HANA or upgrade to HANA. Combining those projects together. If the question was, could it be done? That's where we started working with them. We met them at Sapphire at the AWS booth a couple years ago. So with that, we'd like to offer you a FlexBridge free assessment. You can go out to our website, register there, start off all the good things we talked about previously, as well as we'd love to see you in person. We have a booth at SAP Tech in just less than 2 weeks from now. And we're also going to have a customer event at Tau on Tuesday night. So if you are there, please look us up. We'd love to see you in person, and you can ask any questions. But until then, you can ask us questions virtually. We have the Q&A section, so feel free to answer those.
Excellent. Thanks, Patrick. As people are typing in the questions, we will just take a few minutes here and answer your questions as they come in.
Okay, cool. So we got a couple. Got one that came in at the beginning, and then so I'll go through these in order. So the first one is there a minimum number of instances a client needs to have before moving SAP to AWS to make it economically viable? So I would say, it's a good question. I don't have a number in front of me. What typically we get the question on is there's usually a use case of a customer looking to do, either going to S4 or they're trying to get help to sell the business on moving to HANA. So that's where the POC, the value in economically, the cost to do a POC might surprise you. We looking at trial licenses for running HANA in the cloud, as well as the cost on moving the migration could be just a few days to perform it. We have a fixed fee for our migrations in general, so I'd like to say it's competitively very, very economically feasible. So it's reasonable to do it for one, just to do a proof of concept. Now, those three scenarios, the as-is, the technical migration, and the application migration, each in order are more complicated. So the as-is can be extremely economical to move a system, copy of production, say. If it's fully supported in AWS with what you're running today, that's something that can be done very, very simply. The other key benefit to doing this is the technology that will be used for FlexBridge to do the migration. We can also leverage to do DR. So, for example, if you do not have DR today on premise, you could set this up. You could have a way to copy your production system into the cloud at any time, and you can keep that technology in sync and have DR set up also. So there's a lot of really cool drivers of why you'd want to do it in the first place. But on top of it, you could then have your ECC system, let's say running on Windows SQL, have that now in the cloud. You can make copies of that at any time. So if you want to spin up a copy of prod, and then you can also kick the tires on cloud. So scaling it up to a bigger size, making copies of it when you want to do support packages and test it there. So many good drivers. So just answering your question on the fly, I think even one system for an as-is could be very feasible. It makes sense to do that. For the larger, more complicated projects, transforming the technology, if you go to HANA, it's a little more complicated, a little more money just because licensing is involved. But feel free to, if I didn't answer that to the level you wanted to, feel free to ask more in the Q&A section here. And again, you can always reach out and we can go into more details and customize the answer. Question came in after that on restrictions for systems that can be migrated to AWS. So there was a slide in the middle of the webinar that was around the solutions that SAP provides today. For many years, Oracle was not supported. In the last few months, that was provided as long as you're running Oracle Linux. So if a customer has Oracle today running on Unix, you could migrate your system over, but you're going to have to switch out, transform or migrate the operating system. You can keep the database as Oracle. So the big factor is the operating system has to be able to run an x86. So that means it's Windows or it's Linux. And there's multiple flavors of Linux. Yeah, we prefer and recommend SUSE. So those are the restrictions. Another question came in on time for migration. So that's certainly the biggest differentiator or factor of determining how long the downtime is going to be in the migration. You can, a lot of the use cases that we recommend if you're going to do DR, doing a VPN site-to-site is sufficient. You have to invest at least initially into a direct connect, MPLS, or a dedicated connection to the cloud. Yet, it's not having a dedicated connection when you migrate is going to slow down the migration time. The thing that we find most common with customers moving to AWS is that once they decide they're going to go to AWS, that decision really becomes AWS is now their data center. And so they're going to want to have invest in a very fast, resilient, connection with an SLA, because that is their connection to other resources. So we see that the decision to get direct connect, having a dedicated connection with an SLA is a good investment, and it certainly helps with the migration themselves. Got questions around the largest database we've migrated. So up to now, our largest size that we've done to cloud has been 6 terabytes. That's actually, we did that first system with a DR test actually. So we seeded that system actually through VPN site-to-site. So that in itself took about a week to do, to seed it originally. But once that's replicated, the original seed, the VPN site-to-site was enough to replicate that system and then migrate it. So as you see, today, the 4 terabyte scale up is the limitation. We see it going to be 15 terabytes within the year. And AWS says that any customer with a size larger than 4 terabytes a day, please talk to them still. They will do their best to accommodate with test systems. If we're looking at a migration project, and that's actually the next question that came in is around typical length. So I'll bridge right into that question. The typical migration project we see for doing, not as is, but if you're doing a technical migration or more complicated S4, we would see I'll go in order. The as is could be as short as 3 months, so from start to finish. If it's just a couple systems, that could be less than that. But for typical full landscape, it'd be 3 months start to finish. That's not effort. That's start to end calendar time. And then the start to end calendar time would be 6 months for the HANA, or let's say the technical migration. And then the S4 HANA migration would be at least 9 months, being that there's so much business transformation, and usually an SI is going to be involved at that. It's almost as complicated as a new implementation, being that we're switching out the application.
Yeah, and a lot of that calendar time on those transformations is going to depend on how much time the customer allocates for testing and validation, as well as the technical conversion pieces as well. So those overall timelines for the projects we see vary quite a bit, even if the level of effort doesn't significantly change from one to another. We can do things like migrating systems in parallel to speed up the overall timeline. If you have, say, an ECC, a BW, and a CRM, we would certainly put all those in parallel and do all those migrations in the same cutover outage.
Good point. And that methodology is going to be driven by the SI also. So we'll work with the customer and the SI and their methodology, the order of systems that they're going to run. We're certainly flexible. We're not rigid with how we want to do it. If we see some cardinal rule getting broken, we'll certainly speak up, but we're very flexible with the customer's requirements and system integrators. And with that, I think that's all the questions that have come in, and we're a little over our time. So appreciate everyone's time, and feel free, as this current slide here shows, come see us in a couple of weeks if you're out there.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Pat and Pete. Great job. And we will talk to everyone soon. Again, visit us at TechEd booth 501. Thank you.
Thank you.